Something has just been identified as going on in South Korea right now, and it could very well be indicative of the rest of the world in terms of what the gaming community wants out of games, and it could be kind of a wake-up call for some devs that we don't just want a bunch of freemium, free-to-play, microtransaction-riddled games. Maybe what we actually want is some traditional single-player games. Yeah, it seems that is the interest recently in South Korea. So, I do think this is quite interesting because when I look up popular video games in South Korea, I get this, and it looks like quite a bit of these games are live service games. Now, there is one game that sticks out to me here, Lies of P on the right there. That's from 2023. That is all a single-player game, no multiplayer at all, no microtransactions that help you progress through the game, from what I know anyway. Yeah, you see, it's actually games like this that are actually shaking things up, at least in South Korea. It looks like South Korea is mainly, at least with their development, they like the live service model. They don't very much like the single player model, but Lies of P shook that up. If you didn't know, it was actually made out of a studio based out of South Korea. Maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I am not sure, but this is an article that was just written on the website Game Developer. It says Korean devs report a burst of interest in single player console and PC games. It was written by this guy, but I do also want to note this is a reporting actually of an original reporting by Game Informer. Now it looks like that was, believe it or not, in 2025, actually only published physically, like in the actual Game Informer physical magazine. I haven't heard about that in quite some time. So yeah, that is the original source, but obviously I'm not showing that here. But Game Developer, they say that this report from Game Informer was by a Wesley LeBlanc, and it shows that developers at multiple South Korean studios like Round8 Studio, Shift Up, and Pearl Abyss are seeing signs that players at home and abroad are attracted to single-player experiences on PC and consoles. So this is not just in South Korea, this is all throughout the globe, but this is coming from South Korean devs, which, as I said, I think traditionally they really like a lot of the live service models. So for them to say this is kind of big. So it says the developers at these companies confirmed to LeBlanc that the trend is real and more of them are joining the traditional console and PC market, sometimes thought to be calcified or kind of stubborn here in the West. This is, of course, going to be a huge shock to game developers, and when they see an example like Lies of P coming out of South Korea and dominating, they're going to want to follow suit. They're not just going to want to do the same copy and paste multiplayer experience, and maybe that's just it. People want a new experience. So it says, but why are people making the jump? You know, this jump from multiplayer to single player. It says there was not one clear answer. Instead, a constellation of factors seem to be driving the shift, but those stars all orbit the same point, that players buying games on console and PC are hungry for fresh new experiences. You play 7 years of League of Legends or 8 years of Fortnite and you're just doing nothing but that. I mean, eventually it's going to get stale. Eventually the same process is going to be repetitive, but maybe more so than that, because live service games can change things up, to be fair. Could be due to time management, could be people are getting older, people have less time to just grind all of this multiplayer stuff out, or maybe they just don't want to be spending all this money on microtransactions. They'd rather just sit down, chill, go on a journey with a single player game with the maybe hour or two they have after a long day of work. It's not summer break at 10 years old anymore, okay? We can't all just chug 3 bottles of Mountain Dew at 10 a.m. on a random Tuesday and just play Fortnite for 7 hours. People got big boy jobs now, and you know, maybe it's just a sign that, yeah, the gaming market, the gamers in South Korea and overall in the globe, they're just growing up. They're leaving the nest and they're starting their own life, and so yeah, you just don't have as much time to throw at these live service games. But the big takeaway here is what this will do to the developers, in my opinion. So it says whatever is driving the growing single player market, developers and game industry professionals have plenty of reasons to refresh their thinking about South Korean game development. So yeah, the same live service model is not going to keep on working. It looks like the game publishers and the game developers, they are going to have to start thinking of new single player oriented ideas.